Did Netflix just launch themselves a $200 million massive spy action franchise? Or is this just, another spy action thriller trope? So The Grey Man is like a greatest hits from a band you're not a particular fan of. At times this film just feels like it's taking right out of the spy action thriller handbook. It borrows so heavily from so many films. I almost lost count of how many films this film just borrowed from so blatantly. It borrows from films like Commando, Face Off, the Bourne franchise, Taken, John Wick. It even had shots that reminded me exactly of films like Captain America, the Winter Soldier, where people will be doing these ridiculous jumps off of buildings like they're superheroes, which works fine in a Marvel movie, but in this film it felt a bit out of place. The point is that The Grey Man just doesn't really have much of an identity because it's just taking from so many other better, much more superior films, to the point where I would just remember those films and be like, we should watch that film instead. Not a good look. It's almost like advertising a much better product. If you went to watch an action movie and right in the middle of this film, they were like, you should go see these movies because they're way better. It's like, yes, I will go see them now. Most of this film is convoluted and just overly complicated as it tries to squeeze every trope in the spy movie handbook. Like what could have been used across 3 different films is wasted all in one movie, as if the script lacked confidence to believe in its stars, which is ridiculous considering you have Billy Bob Thornton, Chris Evans, and Ryan Gosling. You also got other big players like Danush, which bring much needed variety and intensity whenever they're on screen, even if the movie barely uses them. Another key standout for me was Julia Butters, just bringing a lot of heart and soul and emotions to this film, even when the film's script doesn't really deserve it. I constantly was like, oh my god, I'm meant to care about this movie. Every time she was on screen, I was like, oh whoa, there's some stakes in this movie, there's something happening. All the actors in this film are phenomenal and they do a really good job. It's just very similar to films like Thor Love and Thunder, the script lets them down. The other big issue, and it's such a easy thing to fix, I felt this film had a very bland color scheme. Something about the color of this film just left me feeling bored and uninterested. It's like they put a turd on the camera lens or something, just lots of browns and blacks, and it's like this film wants to make out like it's The Dark Knight or something with this color scheme, and I just don't understand it. This is a fun popcorn spy action movie. You should be going for vibrant colors, similar to Ryan Reynolds in Red Notice, those type of films. They've got lots of reds, bright colors being used because they know it's not a serious film, it's a over-the-top action movie. And I feel this would have benefited from that. At times, action sequences have way too many cuts. They had me feeling like I was missing things constantly and I was scrambling to reorientate myself. Too much fast-paced cutting, and as someone who suffers from motion sickness, I found the drone shots fun and experimental the first couple of times, but then they get overused and they become annoying. Like they move very fast and sometimes they'll circle a castle or something like that. It's a drone being used. It pulls you out of the immersion of the movie. There were times where I felt they could get the same dynamic movement without the speed of a drone pulling me along. Just give me a simple establishing shot. That's all I want. A simple establishing shot is fine. Not everything has to be so full on and intense to keep us interested. Look, all is not lost with this film. Ryan Gosling is always fun as a quiet yet intense action star, but here there wasn't really enough character development or coherence in the plotline for me to give a shit about him. The movie tries really hard, especially near the end, to throw these little flashbacks at you to help flesh out his tragic backstory, but it's a little bit too little too late. Like the flashbacks work, and I did feel a little bit more sympathy for him, but it felt like the film realized it screwed up and it was trying really hard to correct itself. But in the last 10 minutes of the movie, it's a bit hard to do that. There just isn't enough here for me to see Ryan Gosling differently to other films he's in. I don't think that's his fault at all though. Having said that, Ryan Gosling does a really great job of this deadpan delivery with his one-liners. Even in the midst of the chaos, they made me laugh. His comedic timing as an actor is so underrated compared to his good looks. No one ever talks about Ryan Gosling's comedic timing, but when you look at films like Crazy Stupid Love, it's no wonder he had me laughing so much in this movie. Thor, Love and Thunder. Take note, this is how you do jokes in an action film. When the characters in this movie make one-liners, they actually work because they're not constant. Taika Waititi, maybe take some notes. Chris Hemsworth is touting a villainous mustache, and he is the definite star of the show here. I personally love Evans as a bad guy in films like Knives Out, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and even a hint of cocky arrogance in the old Fantastic Four movies. The problem is he's barely in this film to really light it up. We don't get to know enough about him to see him as anything more than just a genetic rogue agent that will stop at nothing to take down Ryan Gosling's character Six. The plotline is a little bit chaotic and it feels very thrown together. The villain's motives aren't really that easy to follow. There's a whole bunch of, oh, this guy's the villain. No, this guy's the villain. Oh wait, it's this guy above him that's the villain. And it's like, I don't give a f. Just give me one villain. Just give me one central villain to care about. And maybe in the sequels you can build on that and give me other villains. It tries to do so much within a first film. And if this is meant to be a franchise like Netflix was hoping it to be, I don't see a problem with keeping it simple for the first film. You know, films like John Wick and The Bourne Identity, they had big worlds to build with the first film, but they kept it simple so that you weren't overwhelmed by it. And then in the sequels, they built on what was already there. They built on a solid foundation so that they could introduce more characters, and it worked. Those are what you should be copying, mirroring, and unfortunately they didn't do that here. When I watched this movie, I thought of other films like James Bond's GoldenEye. But in GoldenEye, the villain and the hero had a relationship. Like Sean Bean's rogue agent betrays James Bond after working closely with him for years. So there was ties between the main characters. So you give a shit about their rivalry. And it meant more to see James Bond kill this once great friend and partner. But there's no clear ties between Gosling and Evans, so Evans is just a generic villain set up to be vanquished. Ironically, like the many Marvel superhero films that Evans has been in. The one scene from the trailers that stood out to me the most was when Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling finally battle it out and they're making all these like little quips at each other. Like Evans is relishing in the chaos. It's a fun highlight of the film. And that's where this movie was at its best. Unfortunately, that scene takes about 60 minutes before it actually happens, and Evans and Gosling barely ever share any screen time. It's just a lot of like Evans in the background kind of leading, you know, the opposition, leading these other agents to take down Gosling's character. I'd say if you're gonna watch this movie, watch it on Netflix, but don't bother going to the cinemas. I'm giving The Grey Man a 2.5 out of 5. It's an okay, solid action movie that just feels very cliched and derivative. If you're bored at home, you pop on Netflix, it's fine. But just be aware that as you're watching this movie, you're going to be reminded constantly of much better spy action movies. While The Grey Man supplies plenty of action, and it's also got some nice humor sprinkled throughout, the lack of focus on one central plot makes the film come across like a jumbled mess. The film wastes a star-studded cast and visually is kind of bland and monotonous to look at. I feel this film's mission was to bring people to Netflix, and even with a $200 million budget, I can't really recommend to people to sign up to Netflix just for this movie. If they've already got it, sure, why not? But to say to someone, you need to sign up to Netflix just to watch The Grey Man, yeah, it's not working. Honestly, this film could have just ripped off one spy movie, could have ripped off GoldenEye, and had more action between Gosling and Evans, and I wouldn't have minded. So when the trailer was offering me this, what I thought was maybe a new kind of face-off between two agents with Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling, I was like, hooked. But when I didn't get that, I felt so disappointed, like I was lied to. There's a whole bunch of other movies I'd recommend. Captain America, Winter Soldier, Face Off, Mission Impossible, pretty much every Mission Impossible, the Bourne trilogy, Taken, GoldenEye, and even Triple X with Vin Diesel are much better spy action films than this. So that's my thoughts on The Grey Man. But if you liked this video, please give me a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more movie reviews like this. You can also check out my podcast for a more unfiltered, in-depth review at Spotify and other podcast directories. Comment below your thoughts on The Grey Man and let me know, did you enjoy this film? Did you sign up to Netflix for this movie? Did you go to the cinemas to watch this movie? I don't understand that business model. You have it on Netflix and in the cinemas. Of course people aren't gonna go to the cinemas. Anyway guys, that's me. I'm out. Take it easy.